Hi, guys. We're here today at level 39 presenting for you the future of skills. And this is our episode with the delightful Salina Christmas, a talented Malaysian author
Thank you.
based in London. And we've got a lot to share today for you. Hence why we've gathered today in London Innovation Society premises and level 39 here nearby, HSBC, to be able to deliver something that we've been planning for quite a while to make sure that there's something that you guys could benefit from for the future, for the skills that you could gather and make sure that they're relevant in the age of AI, as we say it. So thrilled to welcome today Salina Christmas, as I say, a talented Malaysian author based in London, a dedicated sister, a committed daughter, a journalist, an anthropologist, and more so, by vocation, a consistent storyteller. Hence why the topic of today is creative writing in English and the art of storytelling. Now, my first question, if I may, before we get into the details of becoming a writer pathway, how are you seeing yourself, please, Selena?
Well, to summarize, I'm a journalist that turned into a marketer and then turned into an author. So I would say that it's a natural outcome of my 3 decades of career. I'm telling you my age there. So there you are. Yes, that's how I see myself.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation for coming over
Thank
today.
you for inviting.
Thank you. And then to make it as a smooth ride into our next question is the debut as an author has paved its way based on a set of stories stemming from childhood of Selina's. Now, many would refer to them as horror stories. You'll see some of the examples of Selina's book. I actually have my copy here, The Keeper of My Kin, which is quite an exciting title as well. You'll see here why that is the case. But also, as I was saying, many would refer to these as horror stories, given a breadth of details that Selina has shared about the atrocities from wartime, hunger, and colonial occupation period. Let's start here. How long have you been brewing, working on this, the consistent companion tales, and the succeeding title? Because this is basically what I've showed you as the first book, you've got the second as well.
Yeah, so actually the research, non-fiction research, started up 2015, and the intention was not to actually write fiction. It was to do with the family genealogy because what happened in my family history, the British cut it off, not really 100% their fault, but they cut off my family genealogy into SOAS. So I had to go to SOAS in 2015 to actually learn about my lineage, whatever, succession disputes and whatnot. And of course, like someone said, why don't you write a story? And I was like, no, it's a bit, sticky, family history. But of course, during the pandemic, I was in the middle of writing a romance novel. But because the pandemic happened, I did not feel romantic at all. So my story became horror. So basically, the research for the horror aspects of all this information started out 4 years ago. So in all, I would say that the nonfiction research, historical, is longer. Probably about like a 6, 7 years. But the fiction one in their head, probably about 4 years. But finally, actually developmental, so like a story and bashing it out the past 2 years. So a long time sitting in my head.
Thank you so much for the answer. So this is the story about the horrors of the war, the royal family turned fugitives in the jungle, witnessing out of this world experiences. What's the core message behind the constant companion tales, and what would you like the reader to know, and more so to feel from reading it?
Yeah, so I mean, you've read the first book, The Keep of My Kin, and I mean, like you've shared some sort of like an interesting perspective as someone from Moldova as well, similar to ours during the Cold War.
We are
So
very similar in this, indeed.
yeah, so my story, right? It's pretty much about people trying to get out of the situation. So this is about people trying to get out of the situation in World War One, and this is the sequel is about people trying to get out of the situation in the Cold War, the 60s. So it's all it doesn't take side whether you're like this side or that side. It's like what do people do? And as an anthropologist, I'm always interested in transitional period. Like the first book is about when the Japanese invaded, and that's when the decline of the British Empire, marked by the Japanese invasion. Interesting transitional period, right? How did the people behave? Well, they were nice to each other, and of course, like at the topic of the demonized and the demons. And then, of course, the second book is about how we finally became a country from Malaya to Malaysia. But then Indonesia said, No, 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 I don't want you to be a country. I want you to be part of me. So another 3 years of how do people behave? So as an anthropologist, I'm interested to see how people react to this comfortable or uncomfortable transition.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And as what you were saying in terms of the transition, it
Yeah.
paves the way into the future of the country as it stays later on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, it's a little bit of a question around your childhood. Now, we were
Oh,
talking about paving the way into the future. Now, let's go back a little bit into the
yeah.
past times and discuss a little bit about your quite fabulous childhood. I'd say fabulous because it's not necessarily a usual encounter for a child to, and I will say in a sec what I'm referring to here. So you used to play hide and seek
Mm.
at the cemetery as a child.
Yes.
That's something I've read in a book actually about,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
So you
making a
caught on
parallel.
to that. Okay.
Then your first 15 years, you've lived in the middle of a jungle, following your
Mhm.
father's regiment across the Malayan Peninsula. How has your childhood helped build on purpose instead of grow, I'm saying here, and build the Salina of today? What skills have you built in childhood that are serving you today as an author, the keeper of Malaysian mythology, post-colonialist Malayan cultural identity, who you seem to be personifying through the pages of your books?
So basically, the childhood that I've got, I think, is pretty much unique and similar to what you've got because we're always at the what you call proxy line. So unfortunately, my country is not like a good democracy. It's always in the proxy facing, and next door is Vietnam. So I spent the first 15 years following my father military camps, always in the periphery jungles. And I think one skill that I learned from that background, and I don't know whether this is something that you guys have as well, is the alertness, the ability to read situations. I mean, we know when shit is about, when things are about to kick off, you can just tell, and one hand, it kind of like probably so like make you a bit of an anxious person, but on the other hand, right, you have this thing about resilience and also like what I call anticipatory governance. You anticipate things, and you don't wait for someone to save you. You save yourself. So that, and in terms of like a storytelling, when I was living in like this far-flung post, my father was sent to Borneo, sent to this jungle, whatever, right? The TV was bad in the 80s. Oh, like television transmission is bad. Radio wasn't that good. So all we had was books, and we always have mobile vans, like bringing books to the children of the soldiers, right? And that's where I started to read. I know the French call it Tantan, we call it Tintin,
Interesting.
Obelix, Asterix, all these comic books. And I would say that what I pick up from storytelling, I learned to tell a story by reading a story. And that was all the entertainment that we've got as children. And I think that was the, skills that I developed, over the years. Yeah.
That's fascinating, Serena, and also the fact that what you referred earlier, the anticipation of what
Yeah.
might come through,
Yeah.
and the fact that you've also composed your skills through reading comics. It's something that I've actually
Yeah.
encountered through when I first met you, right? You were
Yeah. Yeah.
presenting a portfolio at the time. It was a bit more of an experience where we've actually met Selena at the time when she was showing her skills as a marketeer, because that's what united us
Yeah.
in the beginning. And then later on, obviously through time, we figure out that aside from that, Selena has this incredible skills as a writer. But then you've told me yourself some time ago as well that the writing skills is not novice to you. You've encountered that predilection for quite some time now.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I mean, like I study English literature, but that doesn't mean that if you study English literature, you'll be inclined to write a book.
Fair enough.
English literature also tend to induce insecurity in a lot of the students to the point that they rather become a journalist and not write fiction because then they think, oh, if I want to write a book, my standard that I have to compete with is Charles Dickens, forget it, and then they just stop writing books. Whereas I find that people that don't necessarily come from English literature, like the writer of Witcher, he was a traveling salesman. He wrote Witcher because he entered his short story for competition. And when he saw the winner, thought, I could write better than this. And then he just like wrote a series of like this Witcher,
It's an
whatever.
amazing
It's,
story.
it's a proof that actually, yes, literature does help you. Anthropology, my postgrad does give certain structure, whatever, to my writing. But actually, it's the inclination to tell a story that is the prerequisite. And if you don't have a degree in literature, you want to write a book, I kind of like take my hats off to you because you're very courageous. Yeah.
See, that's something that entices me to the next question
Yeah.
around your childhood and the skills that you
Mhm.
developed at the time, and your courage to then write a book.
Mhm.
Why did you feel it was so important to portray the story from your childhood? Because not only it is made in a style that shares this view over the mythology,
Mhm.
and it's parallel to reality. How much of this have you lived yourself in childhood that you can refer to? Oh, that's something mystical or something magical happening around me as a family.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it's in terms of so like the historical events that is based on facts. You know, like a Second World War, things that happened, and then Cold War, yes, that happened. In terms of what you call it, the ghosts and the demons of fantasy. That's it. I made it up myself. But in terms of this is where anthropology comes in. The witchcraft practices, I actually followed. I actually referred to sources quoted by anthropologists. So that one, I because Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
I was told by a art historian, PhD. She said that J.K. Rowling, when she wrote Harry Potter, the witchcraft, the magic,
Yes.
that is actually the bog standard occult practices that bog standard. She referred to it like proper. She did not deviate from the governance or witchcraft, whatever. And I thought, oh,
So there is a substance behind
yes,
what you did.
substance anthropology. So with this one, right? Like the first one, I talked about the flying blades. The
Yeah.
blades can fly on its own and do stuff, right? This was actually mentioned by anthropologist R. O. Winstead when he was stationed as a British resident around 1930s, 1940s in Malaya. If you go to the V&A now, and I showed Nadia this, go to the V&A to the eastern section where they displayed the dagger, the
Yes.
Chris, right? It says there in the description, and Nadia saw this, it said that this thing supposedly can fly. The VNA
Supposedly can fly. Can
supposedly
you
can fly,
imagine
and you kind of go like,
the meaning
but
of the word supposedly? Yeah.
yeah, so the practices is I have to refer to anthropology, and then also the demon servant, whatever that's prevalent in Eastern culture. But again, I refer to a so like an anthropological report written by R.J. Wilkinson. It was his widow that donated that plate to the VNA, by the way. And of course, where it comes to so like the story of the war tiger, that was actually from an actual account of one of the former governors there, Sir Hugh Clifford.
Hmm.
He actually had to investigate this massacre that was so bad. He was just a junior resident then, right? It was so bad, and the victims kept saying that, "Oh, these people got decimated by tigers." They were like, "You're kidding me!" And then the tigers look like human too. And I was like, "Oh." Of course, when he made the report, the superiors were like, you know, hogwash, right? When he returned to United Kingdom in 1916, he actually published it as the War Tiger because he thought that, well, I can't make a proper report out of it. I'll fictionalize it. So basically, yeah, some things are based on first account events told to me. Some things are just made up, but some ideas, like a right side ritual, I fall back on anthropology.
And that's probably the right way to go anyway, in terms of you've got the substance, you've got the need to,
Yeah, the rigor.
yeah, to go a
Yes.
little bit down digging.
Yeah, even fantasy has its own, so like a discipline, so to speak, because there are many like more experts of witchcraft, whatever, which I'm not. I'm really an expert in, yeah.
But do you feel that you've told the story of your family in a way that it would make justice to what was lived back then, and versus the stories that were, shared with you guys when you were little?
You know what? I have to say, in terms of sort of like what do you call it, lifting family experience out of it, my father only responded. I wrote the first two books, right? Basically, the Keeper of My Kin consists of Red Hat Gurkhas, what do you call it, the Tiger Man, and also the Flying Blades. He did not respond to any of the things that I wrote until I wrote the third chapter, which is the Flying Blades. And that's when he gave me a call and he said that I remembered something when I was 3, and that was it. And of course, like him being like someone who served in the military, you could tell that there were events that, of course, that could only come from someone telling a father telling a daughter a story, what really happened on the ground. And you know that in terms of conflicts, it's difficult time, So that's that. And also, I think by the second book is when I found out how my country achieved its peace with Indonesia, and it was not told to us in history books ever. It was actually something my father articulated to me in person, and he was one of the soldiers that actually shook hands with the Indonesians when they finally make peace. And I thought, my God, my father is the witness of history, you know. But yes, there are bits of that as well. But in terms of the ghosts and the demons, oh my God, I made it out myself. I mean, I just went wild with it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for the detailed answer, because I appreciate that mixing up and not so much mixing up, but rather bridging reality with
Yeah.
the mysteries of the past, be it mythological mysteries or actually the ones that happen. It's not easy.
Mhm.
A question about the writing process.
Yeah.
Why have you chosen to write about the horror genre or within the horror genre?
Mhm.
I appreciate that this is about, as we were saying, merging the reality with the mystical, with the mythological aspect of it. Um, you are a big fan of comics as well, meanwhile. So tell us a little bit more about the horror genre.
So horror, yeah, I know it's quite interesting, isn't it? Horror writers, I find when I went to cons, right, they tend to be really happy people, and I have a theory on that. I think all of the bad things they go into the book, so their life is like very cheerful. The opposite, right? Horror, I'm always fascinated by it because it's always about cautionary tale. Basically, horror is about you finding yourself in a bad situation, but by the time you realize it, it's too late. So you can actually relate this to climate change. It's horror. It's horror. It's too late now, right? Or like conflicts. Suddenly like a invasion happened. How did we not see it coming? That's horror too. So what I intrigued me about horror, and to a certain extent crime fiction as well, is that the author always gives clues or little, so like Easter eggs, like these things are coming your way, but the protagonist never see it. We as the reader, in the secret, we see that, oh my God, you're gonna go down bad route, right? But they never see it. And in fact, when I actually look at climate change, for example, right, the signs are all there that this is going to happen, right? But it's just that for some reason or the other, society choose not to see it until it's finally in front of their eyes, and they say that, oh, we didn't see it coming. Pandemic, right? It's horror. So that's what fascinates me about it as well. And I find that horror is a genre that's been like a fused with folklore. It is cuts across all cultures. Every culture got a ghost story. Every culture, whether it's true or not, I don't know, right? But for some reason, like people really get this particular genre. Like they know that out of darkness you can create something quite beautiful that you can share with people. So
That's amazing. And I think there was also a lovely quote around that that I'm finding quite relevant. In the story itself, at the very beginning, you were saying, "How can dark become light and light become dark at the whim of fate?" Right, which I found was extremely fascinating. The link up of the two and how you make sense out of the light and the dark. Yeah, so what prevails in the end. So, in terms of then becoming the writer these days, you alluded slightly about the process earlier
Yeah.
on. That, in spite of the comparisons with the bigger writers out there, Dickens, or there
Yeah.
might be J.K. Rowling in the art of mystery, but obviously. Before you get there, you need to trust that there are certain steps before it happens. Can you please tell us a little bit more about becoming the writer these days? What's the process like? And you, as an independent published author, how do you come from ideation of the first draft or the manuscript to seeing your book in bookstore shelves?
So if you were to follow traditional, so like a publishing, where they ask a writer to actually come up with 80,000 to 100 words, which is quite a lot, right? They say that from a story to pub, they say a manuscript to pub is 12 months. But in the reality is, a publisher may have to make money, and you have to actually coincide the production of a new book, new product, right, with like a Christmas season or Halloween, like a horse, Valentine's Day, romance, right? So they do have to work to the schedule, and the writer kind of like feels obliged to actually follow this schedule and trends as well. But what I find is quite it's not a new thing, is that I think you're gonna ask me this later as well, right? A writer now, because of technology and because of AI, a lot of information are now at your disposal. So it's not like before when it was hard. It would have been hard for me to come up with a story like that, like Second World War and then Cold War, right? When there was no Wikipedia, no available internet information on the story, right? And then you kind of go like, oh my god, and you have to sort of like try to do your own research at libraries, not enough. But nowadays all the information is at your fingertips. But that's a challenge though. What I found, and I've spoken to authors and writers about this, when all the informations are out there in history, everyone knows the history. Where's the originality? You want to write a story yet again on Henry VIII and his six wives. Everyone knows the story, right? So how can you actually make it new nowadays? And that is the challenge I find with like digital media, the pervasiveness of the information. Everyone knows the story now. They just go to Wikipedia, that's it, or ChatGPT, right? So I think the challenge of so like being a writer now is in originality.
Mm, fair enough.
And this is why like a lot of authors I find that they actually like go visit, they like go visit so like places. One we went to Japan, Yasukuni Shrine, a shrine for their war heroes.
Selina, you've talked about the AI,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that in the publishing world there's a lot of information at your fingertips these
Yeah.
days. So it's not only that you have done, and I presume all the writers who want to dig more and actually bring in their originality, they need to actually find out in
Yeah.
the field what's happened and
Mhm.
the stories of others so they can make up their own view on things.
Mhm.
But when it comes to AI, how can you make use of what's truly true versus what's fake?
So this is it. Now with the fiction, of course, we got this like a card, right? That like you can create thing, embellish thing, and I think the beauty of generative AI is got its risk, but the beauty of generative AI is that you say, I want to create a monster with like eight arms. AI will do that for you. That's great. It's it's excitement with the generative AI, especially, and of course, like I like the fact that with ChatGPT I can research, so I then don't have to spend so like 4 hours researching online. I just can spend about 1 hour. But of course, the what we trying to get AI on site is with regards to so like plagiarism. We want to be able to detect that and copyright infringement.
So you're saying that technology at the minute is currently behind when it comes to detecting the use of
Developing. I mean, technology is neutral, right? It's not wrong, it's not right, but it's how we actually so like that's why we need first and foremost culture, and then on top of that we need law, and finally we need
regulation. Yeah,
politics.
absolutely.
And actually, technology is like water. You put it in any container, the container shapes the water, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, full of promises, AI, full of dangers as well. And this is the time for us to actually shape it. And I think creatives, writers can actually be at the forefront to say to people, no, this is how I manage artificial intelligence.
Would you say, in this sense, it would be relevant for the authors to somehow have a unified voice, to talk as a community
Yes.
almost?
Yes, and of course, Authors Guild Association. I currently still belong to National Union of Journalists because they're quite good at protecting my copyright. But also as well, I find that like once you get to book writing one day, when you start using Amazon, and let's say for example Kobo and English Spark, the digital rights management platform itself, like Amazon, it can be a lock to prevent your so like a content from being so like a plagiarized. That's why I publish when I serialize my so like a story, I publish it as ebook and on Amazon, and people are like, my Amazon, But then I thought when I do it as ebook here, it's locked. The whole thing is locked, and it's not easy to plagiarize. There is a way, but like what I'm saying is that it's not easy to plagiarize this. So so okay,
Probably
sorry.
closer to the
Yeah, so
this,
so,
this side. Yeah.
but you get what I'm saying, right? So that's the reason why I chose Amazon, because Amazon is a digital rights management platform. It is of course proprietary, but at least like I know that my story won't be actually so like printed as a PDF and then shared on the internet for free, right? Which is
Absolutely. That's quite valuable you're saying, and I suppose a lot of starting authors in particular need to be aware
yes,
of that aspect, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one thing, the research on the back of AI and ChatGPT, and the other thing is the use of that information later on. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing this, Salina.
Mhm.
And then in terms of being able to refer to your own originality,
Yeah.
your own storytelling skills,
Yeah.
can you please make a parallel a little bit and see how would that help the youngsters of tomorrow, the professionals of tomorrow who are the youngsters today, to develop the storytelling skills, and why is it important as a skill for life?
It's important because we humans are wired for stories, yeah. And first thing we learn to look before we learn to read.
Hmm.
Yeah, so performative arts is very important, and visual arts very important. It informs storytelling as well. And stories are actually a form of exchange, and we exchange information. And the thing about books, fiction books, is that you don't just exchange information, you exchange emotion. It goes a bit further than nonfiction. Now, my experience as a journalist is this: journalism is objective. That's the nature of it. You can't just make allegation whatever without talking to people and presenting it like this. And that's why it can be reductive, but at the same time it try to put itself forward as fair. you know Now fiction is subjective. It is not journalism. But again, like I said, that it doesn't mean that it doesn't come with accountability. So to actually encourage young people to write, I would say, when it comes to writing fiction, the good news is it's subjective. It's not like market reports. It's not like a news report. You can go wild and write whatever, right? But the accountability bit is when you have to accept the fact that when you create a character, you're making it reductive. So be careful what you commit to paper as well. So that's why, for my stories, right, I got the first sequel, and then after that, I got the second sequel, because the sequel explains the rupture that is introduced into the society, and then people behave really badly, right, to each other. But the sequel actually explains why they're like that. So I don't want to make the characters reductive. I want to be fair to everyone there. Not everyone's bad. They have a reason for doing so.
Thank you so much, Selena, and that's a wonderful point you're making, because the youngsters need to be aware of what's out there for them and how to start, how to make use of the skills as they develop on the go, right? Hence why the skills for life. And in terms of what has shaped you when you were a youngster with the storytelling skills of then versus now, when you can do all the research in the world that you need, you can visit places, you can make sense of what's out there and make your own judgment if it's something that what you're saying is true to them, or it's also true to you, and to the wider public. So with that in mind, can we talk a little bit about the superpowers?
Oh, okay, right then. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So if you were to have a superpower that you don't have at the minute, or you're not aware that you have at the minute,
Yeah.
maybe you haven't, what would that be?
I would like to be able to see the future, and
Why?
because that would save me a lot of trouble. It's like I will be able to choose the right tube line,
All right.
and I won't get stuck at the lobby. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Do you think though that with that it might come not only the pleasure but also some of the hurdles along the line?
Yeah, of course, because you know what, I always count myself lucky, like I have good wisdom to meet you, to do this, to follow this great progression. But I still can't see the future. So, I thought it would be so much better if I know what lies ahead. So I know not to do this and do this instead.
Thank you so much for the answer.
Mhm.
And I think we're approaching towards the end.
Mhm.
I've got one more question. After that, whoever else might want to give us questions from the public, yeah, please do think about something. So I'm giving you a little bit of a brief ahead. So the last question on my list, and that's okay. We've discussed about your journey so far of becoming a writer, of
Mhm.
surfacing what you've accumulated over the years. What would be the message that you would leave for your younger self, if you would see a younger self walking around, not just looking to the future, but also looking back a little bit? What would you do? What would you say?
Well, I would say to my younger self that, it's okay. The book will get published anyway. You don't believe it, but it will. And another one is don't take rejections too seriously, because it's just normal, and press on with it. That's what I'm gonna say to myself. 15 years. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It basically shows how important writing the book would have been for the younger Selena, right? It's like the mission of your life. Don't you see it? Like it's very much similar in that sense, that if writing a book is what you think at the moment, or leaving a message to your younger self, obviously that was your mission. That was your superpower at the time. You just make it surface.
Yeah. Oh, it's a shame I can't see the future.
Well, let's think that you've already seen a little bit, and the fact that you've published the book, you've got the audience already, so it's just getting your word out there. That's kind of the future that we can predict
Yeah.
already. So it's out there. Anyone else wants to share a question, if anything?
So of course
Enter.
there's another so like a book in the pipeline for the horror. because I have yet to kill off some more characters. That's already in my mind. But actually, my dream is always to write a romance novel, and I never managed to do it. The horror series come up first. So yeah, I mean, of course, when I'm done and I'm satisfied with this, right, and I kill off some key characters, right, I would like to actually try romance or dramatic fiction. Yes.
That's a very good answer, by the way, because it points out to that parallel that you were making earlier, the light and the dark, right?
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
start with the dark,
Start with
and then go
the
through
dark
the
and then
light.
light. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Anyone else? Any questions? Feel free. No?
No.
Guys, it's been fabulous. Thank you so much, Salina,
Thank
for your
you for
time.
inviting.
Really enjoyed it. And I think that youngsters of tomorrow and the professionals of tomorrow, the writers of tomorrow, will need to learn from the experiences that you've accumulated through writing your book, and the fact that we've talked about AI, hence the future of skills in the mix, and the fact that AI is shaping how we do things,
Yeah.
right? And how we will do them in futures. It's about the knowledge, the navigation of
Yeah.
that will make sense for us tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. It's pretty much done. And we'll, with that, end our lovely recording.